Are you happy with what you're paying for energy, cars, and electronics? Well, forget all that because Donald Trump has decided to continue his efforts to tank the U.S. economy in the first 12 days of his administration. Now, on the heels of his failed immigration deportation policy, sending workers underground that are critical for sectors of the American economy, now Donald Trump has decided to turn around and tax and tariff the number one, number two, and number three trading partners with the United States, Canada, Mexico, and China. Canada and Mexico to the tune of 25% tariffs because Donald Trump, for instance, thinks that we don't need the trees from Canada. Trees from Canada. What we get from Canada, it's our number one trading partner for the import of oil and electricity. That's one. Two, all of the strategic minerals that we need in order to produce our GDP mainly comes from Canada. Mexico is auto parts and automobiles and other things as well. And China, of course, electronics. And why is China, who is an enemy of the United States, a foreign adverse party, why are they getting benefited by Donald Trump with only a 10% tariff to wreck those relationships, while our allies are at 25% apiece? I break it down for you here on Legal AF and on the Midas Touch Network. I'm Michael Popok. I've talked about this ad nauseum, but if I didn't think that Donald Trump was a double agent working for Putin before, I do now. The only way you can objectively look at what Donald Trump has tried to do in the last 12 days is that he wants to wreck permanently the global economy and the U.S. economy in particular. He must be a double agent. There's no other way to explain it. No person who's not a madman, hell-bent on destruction, no one would do what he's doing in the first 12 days. On the U.S. domestic side, he's tried to pull the U.S. out of the U.S. economy. He doesn't understand the fundamentals that the U.S. government, through its funding packages, through its social programs, through its grants, through its loans, it helps the economy hum and steps in and helps kind of mediate and ameliorate the issues in our economy at the private sector level. The U.S. is an important contributor and stakeholder in the U.S. economy, and Donald Trump wants to pull them out with funding freezes and sending everybody scattering. The same week, he implements a deportation policy, chasing critical workers through churches and schools to take them out of America, which is putting them underground, so they're not doing key jobs in housing sector, food sector, or in national disaster recovery sector, because we've lost them now, right? So he's got that going on. And then, so while he's at it, as the stock market is tumbling, as the cryptocurrency market is tumbling, what else does he decide to do? It's perfect time now to tax our number one, number two, and number three trading partners. And number one and number two are Canada and Mexico, right? These are critical export-import relationships. Canada, for instance, is our number two trading partner after Mexico, right? 17.5% of all U.S. exports, things that we make that we sell to other markets, go to Canada. 12.6% of the things we bring into our country come from Canada. In fact, Canada is so critical to the infrastructure of American manufacturing. The things they actually send us, energy, electric, oil, minerals, strategic elements, those are things that our manufacturing industry uses in their production cycle. That's how critical those things are. And Donald Trump just wants to cut that with a 25% tariff. And a 25% tariff, you might as well make it a 100% tariff. Because at that level, in the economics of things, they're going to find other trading partners. There's no capitulation other than them taxing us at those levels and cutting off all the supplies. Why? First of all, Donald Trump doesn't understand trade or trade deficits. When you look at, there's two components to trade deficits. There's goods, those are products, and there's services. Those are like consultancy, businesses, law firms, technology, management consulting, and the rest. U.S. is actually above Canada in the trade relationship and the amount of services it provides. The U.S. provides more services and the economy of services to Canada than vice versa. Canada has us on the goods side because included in goods are things that cost a lot of money, like electric and oil and minerals. and strategic elements that are used by our national security for national security purposes. So they got us a little bit on the good side. We got them a little bit on the services side. And overall, it's a very small trade imbalance, if you even want to call it that, at about $50 billion. Donald Trump says, we're subsidizing Canada $200 billion. I don't know who put that number in his head. It's a fake number. It has nothing to do with trade. It has nothing to do with the balance of trade. The difference, the delta between import and export between Canada and the US is very small. I wouldn't even call it a deficit, not on a total trade of almost $1 trillion between the two countries. You don't wreck that now while the world economy is spinning out of control. 12 days in. Again, I asked the question, you can leave me a comment. Is he intentionally trying to wreck the economy? You can't, on the domestic side, pull the U.S. out of the U.S. economy, stop the government from having any investment in the economy itself, pull it out, freeze it, fund it, at the same time that you enter into a multifaceted trade war. Who among Donald Trump, of his economic group, his commerce cabinet, his commerce secretary, his treasury secretary, his trade representative, who thought all of this was a good idea? And the operative word there is thought. Who is thinking about any of this? No one. No one. This is a terrible, horrible experiment of Donald Trump on the world and U.S. economy, and you and I are going to suffer as a result. Mexico. So Donald Trump actually gets up in front of an audience during his presidency in the last 12 days and says, we don't need Canada because we don't need their trees. Okay. Lumber is probably the smallest sector of the trade between Canada and US, and we don't rely on Canada for lumber. But if you're talking about energy, if you're talking about metals, if you're talking about critical minerals, if you're talking about power, all those things that go into our production cycle used by our manufacturers, then you're talking Canada, not trees. Let me show you the clip of this already addled, fatigued, quote unquote, president 12 days into his administration about trees and Canada, because I guess that is some sort of picture card, like a 3-year-old, some sort of picture card they gave Donald Trump about Canada, trees. Go.
But one thing we're going to be demanding is we're going to be demanding respect from other nations. Canada, we have a tremendous deficit with Canada. We're not going to have that anymore. We can't do it. I don't know if it's good for them. As you probably know, I say you can always become a state. And if you're a state, we won't have a deficit. We won't have to tariff you, et cetera, et cetera. But Canada has been very tough to deal with over the years. And it's not fair that we should have a $200 billion or $250 billion deficit. We don't need them to make our cars, and they make a lot of them. We don't need their lumber because we have our own forests, et cetera, et cetera. We don't need their oil and gas. We have more than anybody.
Now let's switch to Mexico. Mexico, put aside all of the ridiculous rhetoric about immigrants and undocumented and criminals. We rely on Mexico, especially in the automotive sector. You like what you're paying for your car? You're not going to like it much after this 25% tariff on Mexico hits tomorrow, okay? Because auto parts get manufactured on the other side of the border, shipped back. Ford is there, GM is there, Chrysler is there. They're all in Mexico, both assembling cars and auto parts to send back to the United States. I know who's not there. Elon Musk. Where's Elon Musk? In China. Maybe that's one of the reasons the Chinese tariff is only set at 10%. That and Donald Trump wants to do business in China and wants to curry favor with China and doesn't want to piss China off. It's better dump on our allies than on our enemies. China is our economic enemy. It's our strategic national security enemy. I don't know how many times I have to say that to the president of the United States, but China is not our friend. Opening them up does not mean you favor them over our allies. Automotive sector goes through the roof now. Everything fundamentally that we manufacture will be infinitely more expensive because of a trade war with Canada. I can't repeat this enough. And again, I have a working hypothesis here. Donald Trump's trying to tank the U.S. economy. I mean, there's no other way to explain this. He's going to cut taxes in order to stop the flow of money into the U.S. government. He's going to pull the U.S. government out of making investment into the economy. At the same time, he's going to enter into a trade war internationally, and he's going to go chase down undocumented who, whether you like it or not, are large percentages, 30, 40, 50% of the workforce in our food supply, in our housing supply, in our construction supply, in our national disaster and other recovery supply. That's where those people are working. They're doing the dirty jobs. And by the way, they're paying their taxes. They paid over $65 billion in taxes last year. Who in their right mind would think this is a good experiment to do all at the same time? Like if let me put it this way. When I took economics in college, if I raised my hand and I said, okay, what would happen? Or if I plugged this into artificial intelligence and I said, what would happen if at the exact same time, within the first 12 days of an administration, a president decided to enter into a multi-pronged trade war with the number 1, number 2, and number 3 trade partners at levels that we've never seen before, at 25% or above, right? Over relatively small trade deficits, and value our adversary more than our allies. At the same time, we chase down and try to deport 14 million undocumented, including those that do the dirty jobs, working in major sectors of our society that matter to the average person around their kitchen table, like housing and food. I'm not done. And at the same time that I do that, right? And I disrupt the European economy and I attack their governments, including our allies' governments, and I embolden our enemies. All right. What would that do to the American economy? So I'll sit back. I'll tell you one thing that's freaking out. The only thing that stands between us and completely having the economy go into the tank in the first month or two of the Trump administration is Jay Powell, the Federal Reserve Chairman. It's the only thing. It's the only thing that stands between us and the abyss, because he took a look at Donald Trump and what he's trying to do to pander to his political base, regardless of what happens to the American people or their economy. He took a look at it and said, you know what? I'm not going to do a rate cut right now, because I don't know what the impact of all this chaotic, this is my words, chaotic policies about immigration, trade, tariffs, trade war, and economic, domestic and foreign policy. I don't quite know what he's doing yet, so I'm going to pump the brakes. Of course, he pissed off, rightly so, the markets who then started to go into free fall, because he's trying to keep an eye on this balancing act with the supply of money, the flow of money into the economy and out of the economy, and trying to be a counterbalance to Donald Trump's worst instincts. Who is guiding him? A fourth grader? You can't tell me these are the best and brightest that we have. You're telling me he's convened a cabinet where he's had Howard Lutnick, who I don't think is confirmed yet, for the Commerce Secretary, sitting around the table with Steve Bissent from Treasury, from his trade representatives, and they all told him, green light, boss, go deport, go cut off U.S. funding, and go start a trade war all in your first 12 days. Who gave him that green light? They should all be impeached and removed. And they're traitors to the American economy. Therefore, they're traitors to what's important to each of us around our kitchen tables, because that's what gets people ultimately elected or thrown out of office. I'm going to continue to report on it all right here on the Legal AF channel. Take a moment, hit the free subscribe button. Help us continue to grow. Now more than ever, this is our break the glass moment. We got to be here as a community. We got to talk truth to each other in order to talk truth to power. I'll continue to follow it all right here on Legal AF. Take a moment, hit the free subscribe button. I like to laugh during this, but I just can't. And I'll see you on my next Legal AF contribution. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories, the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.